Good morning, friends. Welcome to day 3 of the May Minimalism Challenge. Very excited to get started and talk about our challenge, but I'd like to continue our practice meditating together. So I'm going to go ahead and set my timer here for 3 minutes, and we'll get started after that. So, getting some really wonderful feedback from our friends during this challenge, and I'm loving the emails, love seeing the posts in the discussion group. Absolutely hope we can keep talking about each other. There's a very cool conversation happening. So please keep me updated, reply to those emails, and reach out to the discussion group and let your friends who are also in this challenge know how it's going. I feel like a novice on this particular topic. I've been thinking about this a lot recently. My financial situation has always been a little bit of up and down based on how much money I'm making in a particular year. And I tried to work for myself last year. I've never been great about managing my money. But I think I've been picking apart what that's about, what's sort of at the root of that. I don't want to make this too much about me, but I do think the spending is an area that we could really examine. We could learn a lot about ourselves by probing. I'd like to just talk a little bit about what I've observed in my life. We have enough. We are enough. as individuals, and we don't really lack anything. I remember listening to an interview on NPR many years ago, it had to be 15 years ago, and they were interviewing somebody who had just become a citizen. She had come from India, and they asked why. And this young woman said she wanted to come to a country where the poor people were fat. I mean, if that's not a sign of the abundance that we have, certainly not trying to fat shame anybody or make them feel criticized about themselves, but poverty in the United States doesn't mean starvation. I've spent 2 summers in Ecuador, Quito, working at a school that serves families struggling with poverty, and I can tell you that poverty looks very different here in the United States than it does in developing countries. So what's behind this spending? If we have enough and if we are enough, where does this need to buy things that we don't really need to survive come from? I was a media studies and digital culture major undergrad. I loved looking at how media affected and shaped our lives. And I'm really convinced the roots are in the beginning of the industrial age. We started producing more than we needed. We had enough food and enough clothes, and we had a roof over our head, and we were starting to educate our children. For industry to continue to grow, we were going to have to buy stuff we didn't need. So media became a very important role in making us feel insecure. You have to buy that makeup because society thinks you look too old, so you've got to smooth out that skin. You have to buy that new shirt because the shirt that you have from last year, even though it's going to keep you warm and looks perfectly fine, doesn't have any holes in it, you know, it's out of date. Women aren't going to find you attractive, so you got to update your wardrobe. Right? Media and advertising, and media really exists to deliver advertising, right? There's very little, we pay for some of our content, but for the most part, we consume content that is free. But what we pay for in exchange for that free content is we give away our sense of well-being and security, and we trade that for advertising's insecurity that it shoves down our throat. So this issue of spending really is about finding wellness, comfort in our own skin. It's about being very countercultural. And this idea of minimalism, pushing back and saying, you know what, I'm okay the way I am, right? I don't need to have my teeth 3 shades whiter. I don't need to drive the next newer car. My car is perfectly safe and comfortable and gets me to where I want to be. Right? That is deeply countercultural, but it's also deeply healing. Right? There's great sense of internal comfort that comes with feeling some autonomy, some freedom from these outside influences. So today, I'd love for you to, if you skip this meditation, you know, I really hope you would consider meditating for a few minutes. I think being able to quiet ourselves, place our mind where we want to, that calm that comes with that, but also that emotional awareness. We can start to pick apart this stuff. We can see how the magazines in the grocery aisle make us feel. We can see that impulse that drives us to the next purchase. I got a wonderful email from one of my longtime meditation friends yesterday. She talked about going to the pharmacy yesterday afterwards and finding herself in the department store next door and starting to buy something. And she had this moment of mindfulness. She woke up to the moment. She said to herself, geez, what am I doing here? I don't need this. I didn't come here for this. I'm just kind of mindlessly purchasing. And she was able to walk out of that store without having spent that money. I think that's a wonderful example of how our meditation practice really supports our minimalist practice. So we're going to continue to declutter. Again, 3 to 5 minutes max, sort of set kind of a tiny doable space for yourself, and go about it in a mindful way. But again, we're trying to make this a daily part of our life. We don't want to make the project so overwhelming that we can't feel like we can come back to this a little bit every day forever. Right? We also have a little bit of an exercise in the email about looking at some of these motivations. You know, what was something I bought this week that I didn't need? Why did I buy it? What are the feelings attached to that? What would I do if I still had that money? You know, I deleted from this email a very long conversation about security and debt, and you know, I can say that you know, I sort of opened with this. I'm definitely a beginner in this area, but I have been trying to, over the last 2 years, look at what it looks like to live a life with less debt and more savings, and the security and sense of well-being, the reduction of anxiety that comes from that. So, a lot to discuss around this. Again, drop me an email, show up in the discussion group, let us know how you're doing or what you're thinking about this stuff. And thanks for everybody for participating in our Main Minimalism Challenge. Talk to you tomorrow.